Welcome everyone. Welcome to Five Things. That amazing piece of music is, of course, for many of you, you know this, Key to the Cellar. The composer is traditional. The dance is by Jenny Beer and it's called Key to the Cellar. The band for this piece of music was Foxfire, Karen Axelrod, and Darren Douglas. The CD is the introduction. And you can buy that at the Country Dance and Song Society bookstore. We're posting the information in the chat box. Welcome, welcome. I am Darlene Hamilton. We are the Historical Tea and Dance Society. On my team, I have Lindsay Verbal assisting with the program with media and helping with attendee questions. And in the background on Zoom, we have Reed Wilson monitoring for questions and posting. And on Facebook, we have Larry Hansen monitoring for questions and posting. So questions are obviously an important part of this talk. So please feel comfortable with listing them in the chat boxes. Find your chat boxes now. We're in for a really wonderful evening. We wanted to, of course, give a shout out to Karen Axelrod for her concert that she does every Tuesday on Facebook Live. Oh, it was wonderful. It's always so great and so much fun. So thank you always, and to all the musicians who send in so many things. There were a lot of really fun things, as there always are tonight. Stick around for the after talk at the end of this web chat, because any questions that we did not get to during this show, we will be answering in the after talk. So, just come on in. We'll be posting the link in Facebook on our friends page. And if you registered, you will already have that link. So there you have it. I'm going to go into a bio on Jenny. Jenny Beer, she dances in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and she started international folk and contra and country dancing at Earlham College in 1973, and she has been twirling and turning ever since. She teaches English country dance regularly with her home community, the Germantown Country Dancers, and is also an active dancer and teacher with Delaware Valley Scottish Country Dancers. Jenny led Swarthmore's folk dance classes for 13 years and is a mainstay of the English country dance community in Philadelphia, but she's also danced and called all over the world, including Japan, which we'll hear a little bit more about. Mostly you know her from having danced her many beloved dances, including Key to the Cellar, The Minor Spaniard, Ties of Love, and The Cobbler's Hornpipe. These and more were published this year together with a host of great Scott Higgs dances in the book Key to the Cellar. It's a fabulous book. We'll post the link for how you can get that later. She's a caller, she's a dance organizer, a choreographer, a two-term vice president for CDSS, and sometimes she's even a dance musician. Please welcome Jenny Beer. We're so happy to have her. Whoop, and she popped out again.
Thank you, Darlene. I think there's not much left to say now. The basis. Thanks, everybody, for coming tonight. I just want to say before we get into things that Five Things, I've been with you since the start, and Darlene made this up, and it's made my pandemic year a lot lighter and brighter, and I thank you for that. So I guess we're ready for thing one.
We are. I'm just manipulating things in the background, but thank you. That's very sweet. You have made our world lighter and brighter with your music, with your dances. Okay, thing one, a dancing life.
So let's start with March. I had a feeling that shutdown was coming in the first weekend of March, and the dancers around me seemed kind of oblivious to it mostly, but I decided I was gonna pack it in as much as I could. So I went folk dancing on Friday afternoon, I went Scottish dancing on Friday night, and I went to 2 English dances over the weekend. And the last dance was Jean Murrow with our musicians, A Joyful Noise, which is Barbara Greenberg, Danny, and Kathy Talvady. And the music was fabulous. Jean did a beautiful job. And I just felt like, well, if I can't dance for a number of months, this is a great way to go out. Plus, the weekend before, we had our Swarthmore English Scottish Ball. It was the 50th anniversary, if you can believe it. And the students really pulled it out. It was wonderful. And so we had a grand anniversary ball with a full hall. And so I felt like, okay, I'm going out on lockdown on a high. Now it's been a little long. I think I could use another one. So I thought I'd talk first just a little bit about what dance has brought to my life. I think everybody who's tuning in tonight or who tunes in later, English country dance has brought something dear to you, or the cousin dance forms, which I call Scottish, Irish, square, contra. I think they're all dancing cousins. For me, I guess the first thing as a hyperactive person, I get to move, which I really like. And I get to move to lovely, varied, improvised, raw, live music. And I think we forget how many dance forms in the United States there are that rarely have live music. We're just really fortunate to think that this is a normal thing. I also appreciate that I get to touch people and be touched, and to flirt and to appreciate people without creating huge misunderstandings. And as a single person, that's huge. As a caller, I get to tell people what to do, which as a child I did regularly and got in trouble for frequently. But this time they do it. And what's more, they even appreciate it. And one of the high moments of my early calling was the first time I called at NEFA, and I called Dublin Bay. And there were like, 500, 800 people in the main gym, and they all wished forward and wished back. And I thought, wow, I just told them to do that. And they all did, and it looks wonderful. And then of course I get to write little tunes and write little dances every once in a while, and people dance them, which is really wonderful. Dancing has also brought me intergenerational and long enduring companionship. My dance communities are sort of like a wider family to me, or maybe like a congregation. We see each other every week. We hear the latest gossip. We celebrate milestones together, like birthdays and weddings. We argue with each other. We laugh together, we eat together, we travel together. Sometimes we cry together. We make costumes and quilts together. We travel together. This quilt comes from my community, which is why I wanted to sit in front of it today, which was my housewarming gift many years ago. And I think at least 2 or 3 people who are participants are also present in the quilt behind me. And sometimes I think of my dance community as my private soap opera, a long-running soap opera. So it's been a long and wonderful run, and I'm really very grateful that I've ended up doing this. Lindsay, let's just bring up the slide now. I didn't want to go into a long disquisition about my bio, so I wanted to just put up here, these are the main places I've danced, the main things that I've done. And you can ask me about it later in the chat if you're curious about any of them. When I started at Earlham, I actually went to Earlham because they had folk dancing, among other reasons. That was high on my list for what I wanted in a college. And I started international folk on the very first day of freshman week, and I started country dancing on the second day of freshman week, and I never left. What was interesting about the country dancing, the first night that I went, I recognized all the tunes because I had been in a madrigal group for many years, and I had played recorder for many years. And starting with the Trapp Family Singer book and then some others after that, were full of these English country dance tunes, and I didn't know they were dances. So that was very exciting. I had teachers that came from the New England area, one of whom was a Dudley Laufman follower, and the other was a good friend of Fred Brunig's. And the rest of the people there pretty much came from Berea, which was a slightly different dance tradition. So I started out with these two streams. I just put Delaware Valley next because I've grown up here and I keep coming and leaving and coming and leaving. So I've danced here many years when I was actually living somewhere else, because I often came back to see relatives or to hang out for the summer. Then, as you'll see in a little bit, I spent 2.5 years in rural Japan right after college. And then a delightful year in Brattleboro, where I danced at Chelsea House and Fitzwilliam. And there were times when I was dancing 4 nights a week. It was great. When I came back to the Delaware Valley, I started Scottish at this point. And then later, when I moved out to Berkeley to do my PhD, I still did a lot of Scottish, and I began teaching English, and I apprenticed with Bruce and then ended up co-teaching with Bruce. And I still did contra and folk from time to time. During that PhD season, I was in Japan again, this time in a very different location, an urban location, and joined a fantastic Scottish branch. It was small and wonderful. And I got another long story. I got enticed, I should say, into teaching in English and contra, sort of basic community dance in Japan once a month. Back to the Delaware Valley after I finished my PhD, and I lived in Scott's communal house, Scott Higgs' communal house, for 5 years, which is why we've talked about dancing forever and why we ended up doing a book together. And then during that time, as Darlene mentioned, I taught the Swarthmore Folk Dance Club, co-taught the Swarthmore Folk Dance Club for quite a while, and recently went back for the last 2 years. I've been doing the Scottish there. At the same time, I have inherited at the same time a once a month retirement community gig, which draws people from the region, but mostly people who are older dancers. So I had, these wild 18-year-olds who don't know where their body is, but have lots of energy. And then people who are 75 and feeling their knees, but very sweet and kind with each other. So I've enjoyed doing both of those kinds of things. And then I just put the note at the bottom, the years that I was on the exec board. Because we get to travel around the country to see different dance communities. And that was a real wonderful eye opener for me. So there you have my bio in one lump sum. I don't know if we have questions about that.
Well, I think with that, we go right into thing number 2.
Okay.
Accents and styles.
Great. All right. So many of you know I'm an anthropologist. Somebody has once accused me of watching all the dancers like they're the primates and I'm the person studying them at the dance hall. And I want to start with yes, she's getting fancy with the fonts. It's my fault. I will confess. And I thank you. They're cute. I want to talk about the time I was in Japan briefly. So I worked for 2 years in rural Japan, and I was really worried that I was not going to be able to dance for 2 years. And that was actually my main concern, is how am I going to survive not dancing for 2 years? So my new boss picked me up in Tokyo, and it took 10 hours to drive to the village in the north. We drove up the main valley, and then we got 3 hours worth of dirt roads around and through mountains. And Lindsay can put up the pictures here of what the coast looks like when we finally got to the coast. So this is from the south. The whole thing is the village here, sort of like a New England village. From the south looking north, and each one of those little coves has a tiny harbor with a tiny fishing hamlet. Yes, it's gorgeous. And it's gorgeous, and it's a national park. The whole coastline of the village is a national park. And let's look at the next one. This is from the north looking south. This is the most famous view. I always thought that rock on the right looked like an elephant butting its head into the cliffs. Anyway, you can see how remote it was. And, you know, every once in a while we'd pass a little hamlet or a little farm, but I thought, wow. Then the first day of school, the teachers all gathered, the English teachers all gathered to meet me, the middle school teacher, junior high school teachers. And we went around the room to introduce ourselves, and there was only one other young woman in the group. Everybody else was male, and most of them older. And this young woman said, "Oh, my hobby is folk dancing." And I thought, well, that's cool. Maybe I'll learn some Japanese folk dancing. And when it came my turn, of course, I said, my hobby is folk dance too. So I went 2 weeks later to her school, which was a tiny school in the mountains, only 7 or 8 teachers for the whole junior high. And the teachers have their own little teacher room, and then they go to the classrooms when they're teaching a class. So after school, Yasue is her name. Yasue said, "Oh, I brought my dance tapes." Reel-to-reel tapes. That's how long ago it was. And she put on the tapes, and out came this da 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 dum, da 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 dum. Those of you who are folk dancers will recognize Ali Pasha, which is a Turkish dance. And I was so startled. I jumped up and I said, "I know that dance." So we hooked our little fingers and we danced around the kerosene stove in the middle of the teacher's room, and the teachers thought we had just gone crazy. So what happened after that is that she and I danced after school every other week. We would dance in a classroom, and soon we got a phone call from the local town hall, and it turned out that 2 people in the town hall had also folk danced when they were in college, and they asked if they could join too. So we said yes, and we ended up with 6 or 7, maybe 8 of us dancing. And we started then traveling to folk dance weekends all over northern Japan and down to Tokyo. So the moral of the story is dancing is everywhere. Wherever you go, you can find dancing. And I did learn a little bit of Japanese dancing too as well. So the first anthropology point here is, how does a dancer who learned folk dancing in Indiana and in Delaware meet a woman who learned to dance in northern Japan, and they both know the same Turkish dance to the same music? So obviously, let me switch my notes here. I think what's interesting here is how we develop standards across time or space. Patricia, there isn't any English dance in Japan except when I teach it. There's nothing happening there. There are a lot of other kinds of dancing like Scottish, and it's taught in Japanese mostly with a lot of English words thrown in. So we see cheat sheets like John Playford made, thank you, records the kind of dissemination that the Royal Scottish Country Dance and Song Society does, dance competitions, even this 5 things discussion. These are all ways that we travel across time and space and communicate how our dances go and what we love and what's important. And so you get standards set up that way. People have the same music, they have the same instructions. And in a way, it vicariously allows us to travel and to share. And if you go somewhere else, like to northern rural Japan, there might be somebody who can actually dance with you. So I think also this kind of dancing, it attracts people who appreciate repetitive patterns and being coached as to what to do so we don't have to improvise that much. It's much less about personal expression and more about group experience of dancing together. So moving on to the accent part here. I had to concentrate and practice pretty hard to learn Eastern Europe folk dances for my Friday night at Earlham College. In contrast, the Saturday night where I was learning English country and sort of a mix of things like they do in Berea, it was so easy I don't remember learning it. because I think the way we walk, the way we hold our bodies, the way we touch people, our internal sense of rhythm, our eye contact, how much we cover ground when we walk, how bold or shy we are in how we speak to people. These are all learned and practiced for many years before we start dancing. And I had an aha. This would have been, I think, in the late 90s. I was on volunteer crew at Pinewoods a couple of years, and I was there for Boston Center's Folk Dance Week. And a man named Ahmet, who I think is local to New England and often teaches Turkish dance. It's a Turkish dance night. I hadn't noticed this. He taught during the day, and then one evening he had the men in the class demonstrate a complicated men's dance that he had taught them. And as I was watching, I thought, you know, all of these men in the class were clearly experienced folk dancers, and they had learned the footwork. But there was something about how Ahmet held himself and how he moved to the music that was really beautiful. And the people behind him in line, they just couldn't quite look right, even though they were doing the right footsteps. And this thought popped into my mind that we all dance with an accent when we dance foreign dances, especially. It's a foreign way of moving our bodies, holding our bodies, thinking of ourselves. And no matter how much you study the dance, the accent is still there a little bit. And I think it's similar to language. You know, my father learned English at the age of 10 or 11, and he's completely fluent now that he's 93, but he still has a faint accent, and people who are alert can pick it up. And I have a feeling that dance is the same way. And of course, this is not just across place, it's across time. So when we reconstruct a dance from the past, there's a lot of information about how people actually moved or interacted with each other, what kind of eye contact they gave, that kind of thing that we don't know. I think also we have regional accents. How am I doing on time here? Okay. The people that we dance with regularly, we develop a similar style. I found this when I moved to California, and I kept trying to fit into the dancing in California, and I never quite managed it. And one day, Lee Stikeman, who in those days was still living on the East Coast, came to visit, and we danced together. And Lisa and I, as young people, had danced in the same dance group. And I found that dancing with her was just like breathing. And that's when I realized, you know, when you dance with someone for a long time, there are things that I want to call micro style, that you know when you're going to cast and at what angle and at what speed and how you're going to hold your hands in a two-hand turn. It gets to the point with my longest term dance community that I joke that we dance by eyebrow, because even if I go like this, they know which direction I'm going. And you can see when someone was thinking of making a mistake, but didn't, because we know how to read each other at that really deep level. So at the micro level, I think there's a lot about dance that we as teachers never teach. People learn it by osmosis, by dancing and immersing themselves, imitating others and immersing themselves in a dance community. And so what we teach is like this top layer of the basics, and there's a lot of richness that just gets picked up unconsciously by people. Well, my last story in this one is a square dance set. Well, it was a Scottish dance, but it was in square formation. And I was having a good time. I was making nice big casts and loops and dancing with vigor, as I like to do. And I think it was Bruce Hamilton who was teaching that night. And he said, "Jenny, you're not covering." And I said, "You're right." And I hope I had this argument with him later, not at the moment. But I said, you know, I was the most experienced person in that dance set. And there was nobody who was older or having trouble that they couldn't dance large. And I said, I thought they should cover with me. And this raises the question of, who do we adapt to? Whose style do we imitate? Who gets to set the tone? Bruce says we did. Who gets to set the tone and the size and the shape and the feel of a dance? Whose style do we think is charmingly idiosyncratic and it remains that way? And whose style sort of gets taken up by the group? So in my own dance community, there's a little heel flick that people do, some people do when they round a corner. There's a way that people tend to hold hands, especially the men. And there's another where instead of doing a flow, we do a flow and then we snap into place and do the next move. So there's sort of a little flick. All of those things I can trace back to individual people that I think others started imitating. They may not even be aware that they were doing that. So status is always operating subliminally. The one thing I like about English is that we jettisoned our official rules about how to do English dance sometime in the mid 20th century. And we're pretty loose about our standards. And this allows for local variation or for a little bit more improvisation in play. It also makes for vigorous arguments about what style is correct or what style is beautiful. So I think that's it for accents and styles for the moment. I could talk for another hour, but I won't.
You will later in the after talk. Talking about your community, you have an amazing system of friendships, including Scott Higgs, who you mentioned earlier, that you all have a special camaraderie together. And I was wondering if you might talk about that a bit, because we know that's something very special there.
I deliberately didn't make a thank you list because, again, I'd be here for a half an hour. There's so many people that I've enjoyed working with and enjoyed dancing with. I would say first, of course, Bruce, who I apprenticed with, and then Scott, whose household I was part of. I mentored Joanna briefly until she zoomed way past me, and now she mentors me. And I have to also say the Germantown country dancers, we have at any given moment about 7 or 8 callers. We meet together several times a year and talk about business, but also about teaching and calling. And all of us have had so many conversations and days of working and dancing together that I would say those are my immediate buddies.
Great.
I should probably also give a shout out to David Newitt, because he and I hung out in the Bay Area for 7 years doing dance stuff together too.
I know that we were talking about how valuable that is. And it's come up a couple of times in other talks, but I just thought maybe you'd say something about that.
Well, you know, I was going to talk tonight about mentoring because I have a good 15 or 20 minutes we could talk about that. And if people want to talk in the after chat, that would be great. It's one of the most wonderful parts of being part of a community is being mentored and also getting a chance to work with musicians, new dancers, new callers, and see them brought on board. It always makes me better as well as whoever I'm working with. And I think our group is more conscious of mentoring than many others. So I'd be happy to talk about that in some detail afterwards if people want.
That sounds great. But for now, we did mention that fabulous book. And it's, I'm going to just do this thing rather than ask you a question right now and have you talk about it. Thing 1, thing 3.
All right.
Thing seller.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about choreography more generally in a minute, but we'll have a little commercial interlude here. I think Scott also mentioned this in his 5 things, but we managed to get a book out in December after many years of procrastinating, and we decided to do a book together because if we were both doing it, it might get done. And of course, it came out in December and then COVID shut everything down in March. So we don't have videos or a CD or anything to go with it yet. And I'm just hoping that we get back to dancing soon enough that the book will not be an antique by the time callers get back to it. But it was really fun to put together, go through all the dances and decide which ones were really worth it. And thanks to my various dance communities, especially Germantown country dancers and Swarthmore, because we practiced dances on them endlessly to the point where we decided not to have a book party because everybody was tired of the dances already. Anyway, you can order the book through Scott Higgs's website, and you can order the physical book, in which case I mail it to you. And if you order the book, you also get a free PDF download, or you can just buy the PDF only. And there's a PDF that's just of the book itself. And then there's a PDF where I have changed everything into gender neutral language. So that's the key to this. I'll talk about it in a minute, but let me do my
question. Let me interrupt for a second.
Sure.
We wanted to know about the cover art.
About what? The cover art? Oh, yeah. So that Scott found that. This is a Kandinsky, one of Kandinsky's most famous paintings from 1913. And he was trying to express the emotions that music gave him. So we tried lots of covers, and it turns out that keys and cellar doors are really dark and not very inspiring. So we gave up on that and decided Kandinsky was the mood we wanted. So let's just look, we can whiz past the dance list. I think people can come back to that if they need. And I just want to do a little advertisement about one more book. Here comes the cover. So this book was supposed to come out in April, and it is now 98% finished and waiting until the day that we can dance when we will actually put it into print. Dave Wiesler and Melissa Shaner and I helped put together 24 country dances from our local Scottish group, which is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year by not dancing. However, it's got some really great dances in it. And if you want to be put on the announcement list, email me and I'll make sure you get an announcement when it becomes real. We'll probably also have this in PDF and physical form choices. I'm glad you like the cover. I didn't do the 50. Dan Emery designed the Celtic 50, but I put the cover together and I love it.
That's a beautiful cover. Are we going to hear that story about Key to the Cellar?
Okay. A number of people asked me to tell the story, so I'll tell the story. We had Scott's Dance, which is meets once a month, had been in the same church for 20 years. And it was our last day at that church before we moved venues. And I thought I would commemorate it with a dance. So Scott wanted a dance that was easier than Hamilton's Roundo, but had the same haze in it. And I wanted to try a meltdown swing, which was very popular in Contra at the time. So I had those two figures. And in the very early days of the internet, I had found an English Ceilidh band had put handwritten tunes up on their website of all their favorite 3/2 hornpipes. So I had downloaded all of them in a little set and played through them. And this time I thought, oh, I should go back and look at those tunes and see if there's one I want. And Key to the Cellar, which was the name of the tune, just jumped out at me. I didn't realize at the time that Judy Erickson had picked the same tune for her longsword dance at about the same time. So we have good taste. So I put the dance together, and that night, I guess Scott was at Pinewoods because it was August. So I was in charge. I called the church. I said, remember to unlock the door for us. We got there and as was not uncommon, they had forgotten to unlock the door. So I went around to the Sunday school building where there was a loose window that we used to send small people like me in, if necessary, to go inside and unlock the door from inside. We went around the corner and found out, oh, this summer they put new windows in. Darn. So there we were, locked out, no key. And Sandy Rotenberg, who I think had the only cell phone at the time, this is 2004, called Kate and Ed Neely and said, can we use your basement dance room tonight? Because we have 25 people in the parking lot with nowhere to go. And they said, well, we're going on a major trip tomorrow morning, but sure. So we all drove up to their house and tried out the dance. And I have spent years trying to write a 3/2 dance that's as good as Dusty Miller or St. Margaret's Hill, because we need more of those in the repertoire. So I had written it as a 3-couple dance, but it was clear once we started dancing it that the tune had such drive that it really needed to be a triple minor. So the first night of the dance, we had no keys and we ended up dancing in a cellar. I thought that was pretty amusing. Another interesting thing about this dance, people often ask me, how do I get my dances danced? And when this dance was new, I often find when dances are new, people think they're hard or awkward. And later, when we look back, we can't imagine that that was so. The Swarthmore students put it on their ball in February. And I'd had an operation, so I was sitting at the sidelines, and our friend Rich Baker, who we lost recently, came over and sat next to me, and we were watching Key to the Cellar kind of fall apart in the hall. And he said, this dance is really not ready for prime time. I thought, Rich was known for telling it as it is. So it took a while for people to get a hang of the dance. And also the musicians didn't like it. They said, oh, it's a boring tune. We don't know what to do with it. Then Susie Lorand probably won't remember this, but Susie Lorand played it at a festival that I was calling at. And she came up afterwards and said, that tune, it's such a wonderful tune. And I realized that for experienced musicians, there's endless, Susie Lorand, it was Philadelphia's Heritage Festival, I think. I realized that experienced musicians can do all kinds of things with this tune. It's just the intermediate musicians who have a little trouble with it. So I made sure that when I did the dance after that, that I did it on occasions when I had good musicians. Bruce then brought it to English Pine Woods because I think I'd sent him a copy. And what happened after that was very interesting. Helena was at English Week and she liked the dance. And so a few weeks after that, on a Monday morning, I get an email saying, hi, Helena was at our community doing a workshop this weekend and she did your dance and we'd like a copy. And then a couple Mondays later, I get another email saying, hi, Helena was at our community this weekend doing a workshop and we'd like a copy of your dance. So that's actually how it got seeded across the country. So it's been very helpful to me. I'm lucky I have friends who are really superlative worldwide callers. And when I send them dances, they at least try them out. They don't always take them all the way, but they often do. And I'm very grateful that they do that. So in conclusion, I've always wondered, why do people like this dance so much? I mean, it's a nice dance, and I realized dancing it one day at Heydays that it's a trance dance. There's something about the drive and the flow that you can just get into an altered state. And I think that's why people enjoy it so much. All right, I think that's enough about Key to the Cellar.
That's a very interesting thing. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right, let's move on to thing number 4.
How are we doing in the time here?
Thing number 4, we are just fine. Don't you worry about time. Thing number 4, crafting dances. We're going to go until you finish all your stuff because it's fascinating. Thank you.
Appreciate that. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about choreography because it's nice in the 5 things if people have a little segment of how-tos. Sometimes inventing dances comes easily, other times as Germantown country dancers particularly can attest, it takes me 20 tries. And in one case for Ted and Tanya's wedding dance, it took me 20 years to get it to the point where I really liked it. But I seem to have, I don't understand why some people write dances and some don't. Because a lot of people have great choreographic sense, but they just don't write dances. I can't help myself. Whenever somebody gives me a piece of written thing, I edit it, and I usually change the fonts. Whenever somebody gives me a dance, my first impulse is to tweak it, and I have to be careful not to do that. So there's just something, I really enjoy experimenting and inventing and creating things. So I started doing choreography when I was 24. I think I wrote my first contra dance, and I can't find it now. I've written it down somewhere, but I don't know where it is. But I know it had 3 swings, and I called it Spinning Jenny. So you can see what kind of contra dancer I was when I was in my mid-20s. So I thought we would start by looking at a video of one of my newest dances, which I wrote fairly quickly. I tried it out once and then I changed something, and then the second time it was in its final form. So I'd like to just run one iteration of this video, and then I'll talk about the choreographic choices in it. So while you watch the video, look for shapes and look for the direction of momentum, the shifts in direction. And then we'll come back and talk about it. So this is Ties of Love, and Bare Necessities is playing behind me. This is in December at the Princeton special dance in December that I was calling. So the music sounds terrible, and that is entirely the fault of my cell phone, not the fault of Bare Necessities. Great, thank you. Let's put up the next slide, just briefly, the one of the Ties of Love from the book. I think it's the next, oh, that's right, it's a different file, sorry. So this is what the book looks like on the inside. Well, it's what the PDF looks like, because I could put blue print in the PDF that doesn't appear in the physical book. You'll notice that the tune is by Andrea Hoag. And it's a song tune that she has words to called Rose by the Door, which when I first heard it, I thought it must be a 400-year-old Scottish tune, but no, she wrote it herself in the 1980s. And I'll go through the choreography actually on the next slide, but you can take a quick look at it there. The first corners do something, and then there's a wavy line. The second corners do something, and there's a wavy line. Circle, cast, lines up and back, one's cast. It's the fast version. So let's go to the next slide if we could. So I don't have time to talk about all the elements of a dance and why they're important, but this is a quick list of the things that I think are vital. And the 2 that are starred are the most important. So when I started writing Ties of Love, unusually, I did the dance before I had music, which doesn't happen very often. And I tried this tune and I tried that tune, and nothing fit very well. And then fortunately, Barbara Greenberg was going to play for the dance where this dance was inaugurated. And she said, how about Andrea Hoag's Rose by the Door? Perfect choice. So thank you, Barbara. Thank you for Andrea. you have to have a tune that people really want to play as musicians and a tune that people can listen to over and over with pleasure. There are so many dances out there that if the tune is so-so, the dance, even if it has great choreography, is not going to go anywhere. And then the very last thing that's starred is the same question I ask when I put a program together. Why would the dancers want to dance this dance? We have a choice of 3,000 dances. Why would this dance be the right thing for this time and place? And if you can answer that to the dance you've created, then likely it will be something that people enjoy. So looking at Ties of Love, we did number 1 and 2 really well. It's a great tune, and I like tunes personally that I can sing because I grew up in a musical family and I sang long before I danced. Whether the figures fit the tune, I will let you decide, but I think it does. And then notice that I'm often thinking about what are the symmetries and how can we have several different symmetries and smooth shifts between them. So you may have noticed that the opening is a right-hand turn, and then there's a staying in place as you balance in the wavy line. Then you have a left-hand turn, which is a reverse symmetry from the right-hand turn, and the corners orbit home. Then you have a circle, which continues that radial symmetry. And out of the circle, you can cast, which changes into mirror symmetry, into a straight line, where you now have parallel movement. Everybody's moving up, everybody's moving back, everybody's setting in the same way. And then there's a mirror cast that sets the first corners up, the new first corners up for turning by the right hand. So you'll see the green thing down there. I think one of the lines got left off, but that's all right. So you see curved pass and straight pass. I like a dance to have a combination of those. And each of the corners has 2 bars of rest. I find that people enjoy a dance more if they have 2 to 4 bars of rest during the dance. The transition to the end is all right. And then let me talk a little bit about the interaction and the physical pleasure and the awkward moves. So the first A is the first corner is turned by the right until you give hands to your neighbor. You balance in line, and then you turn that neighbor by the left, let go, and curve home. You'll notice, so I guess, yeah, let's go look at the video, and we'll stop the video and we'll show you how this works. So here they are balancing in line. This is the first corners in the middle. You can keep it going. And then they let go to orbit home, and we'll freeze it. Oops, we didn't freeze it in time. Can we go back and freeze it? So sorry. So let's start it right there. So at this point, you've let go your neighbor and the first corners are heading home. Notice that the second corners, who are Louise and Michael, have their left shoulders pointing into the set. Now, ordinarily, you would think, okay, the second corners are going to do the same figure, but they're going to reverse and have them start with a left-hand turn. And that seems like the natural thing to do. But if you do that, you end up giving your free hand to your neighbor again and turning your neighbor again. And this dance does not have very much partner interaction. So I wanted to make sure that people had time to at least give a hand to their partner and give a little turn to their partner, if nothing else. That meant that these corners had to change direction. So fortunately, because it's a waltz, and we can let it run a little bit here, you'll see them reorient. They have a moment to turn and come in by the right, which I feel is very much like a quite carried away moment. And when I dance Ties to Love and I do that thing, I get this little thrill right here in my breastbone. I don't know why. So sometimes if you do something deliberate, the awkwardness can become something pleasurable if you expect it and get yourself ready for it. And here comes the group moment. I always like to have a moment when the whole group really feels like they're dancing together, and the cast. So that explains, I think, the other 2 points on my original chart that talk about making sure that you have as much interaction within the minor set as you can, and that each movement should be pleasurable and not awkward for all 4 positions. So I dance around my kitchen and my living room a lot thinking, oh, does this work for the second couple? I'm not sure. And making sure that all of those moves sort of go smoothly together. And then the last thing that was on that list that we haven't talked about yet is simplify. This is true of all creative processes. Pruning, it's the hardest thing to do after you've created something. But I had a fairly fussy B music when I first wrote this dance. And I tried it out and I thought, I want the first figures to really stand out. And that means that the rest of the dance needs to have something that's really familiar, that people don't have to think very hard to remember. Circle, cast to a line, right? And when I simplified it that way, suddenly the dance became much more doable and people enjoyed it more. So I think the only thing I didn't mention is that sometimes dances have a reason. And the reason I wrote this dance is because we had some beloved dancers who up and moved to Pittsburgh very soon without letting us know in time to give them a goodbye party. So I thought I would write them a goodbye dance. Their names are Carolyn and David Tylov. And I just thought, well, ties of love. Yeah, that's where the title came from.
What a perfect title. Oh my goodness. Well, we are down to thing number 5.
Yeah. Thank you all.
Seasons of the Heart.
Seasons of the Heart. So I thought I'd start with a story from English-Scottish session. I was teaching the English. This is in 2013 when Morris Offspring from England came to work with Maple Morris of New England to put on a grand show. And it was fabulous. We'll put a link to the show in the chat. They have just uploaded the whole show recently to YouTube in October, so you can watch the whole thing. But they were rehearsing during English Scottish Week, so they had C sharp minor for the whole session. And they did very vigorous dancing all day. They sang all during lunch and they sang all through dinner. It was just wonderful to have this kind of vibrant energy all weekend. And I decided that in the evening, I wanted to make sure they didn't go off and party by themselves or just wimp out because they were tired. So I asked the British English dancers if they would do a Ceilidh dance, one dance an evening, so that they could show the group some of the English dances that real English people are doing now and enjoying. That was fun. It was loud and rowdy, lots of swinging, lots of lines stomping up and down the hall. And some of them hadn't called that kind of dance for a crowd before. So I did a little mentoring in the background, a little coaching. And after a day or two, a woman came up to me in the dining hall and she said, I'm really angry. I come to English Scottish every year and I'm not able to dance. It's too loud and rowdy and I don't like this kind of dances. And I feel like you're privileging these young people. And I said, well, I'm sorry you're not having a good time. And you're right, I am privileging the young people. So it's a really amazing opportunity for the next generation on either side of the pond to get to know each other well. Many of these people have never seen Scottish dance. Some of them have never done Playford except as something old and plotty that their grandparents do. And so we're exposing them to a larger range of what's possible. And I had to make some priority decisions. And so, yeah, that's what I did. So that night, more rowdy dancing. And I went to the sidelines to sit next to an old woman who has, I think, come to every single English Scottish session ever. It's now called English Scottish Contra. Those of you who are hoping to go next year, I think I'm on staff again if it ever happens. And I sat next to her on the bench for a minute to check in, and she said, "Oh, it's too rough out there. I'm fragile enough. It's kind of dangerous, so I really can't do these dances." And I said, "Well, I'm sorry you're not having a good time." And she said, "Oh no, it's wonderful." And then she said, "It's the energy is fabulous. It's great that they're getting to hear these dances from England. It's wonderful that they're all jumping into Scottish and learning Scottish. And I'm enjoying myself thoroughly." And I thought, as I age out of dancing, who do I want to be? I don't know about the first woman, but the second woman is still dancing and still having a good time. And there's something about making space, keeping a loose sense of play, thinking about what David Smuckler said, was it last week, about loss, and that anytime a tradition changes or new people come in, yeah, you lose a bit about how you used to do it, and it's not the same. But that's a living tradition. That's what it is. So I hope and try to continue to make space for that as I get older. Which reminds me that a few weeks ago on Facebook, a number of us were commiserating saying, wait, how did we morph into responsible elders? Like the people who always know where the extra key is, and the people who make sure that the new people got greeted, and the people who are looking for a new keyboard player because we need one, and the people who made sure that the insurance bill got paid, the people who got the long swords to the gig. What happened? How did that happen to us? Because I think when you first start dancing, you're really into learning the dance and getting excited about the dance. And when you do something for a while, your attention gradually expands. At first, you're just like worried about, do I know the dance? Is my partner embarrassed to be dancing with me? And then you take in the 4 people you're dancing with, and then maybe this set. And as you become an experienced dancer, you begin to see all corners of the room. You understand how much organizing and networking and care is happening behind the scenes. Like, for example, in 5 Things, they have 3 rehearsal dates before people come on, invisible to us, right? So I find that the sweet part of having danced for 47 years, and I hope the pandemic ends soon enough that I have a few years on the other side of that, I feel like I'm on a hilltop, sort of looking back towards all these wonderful people who taught me how to dance and befriended me. And I spent hours in their kitchen and hours in their car. And many of them are gone. A lot of them are still here. And then looking the other direction and watching the young kids grow up. It's been particularly true in my Scottish dance community, where we do a lot of things together, not just dance. And it's been really fun to watch several generations grow up, some of them into dancers, some not, but we love them anyway. And then watching the younger generations move in and make this their own in one way or another. And you see so the arc of changes and how the dance form changes as our notion of gender relations, marital relations, community relationships change, so does our dance form. And yet there's a lot of continuity to it. I think if somebody from 50 years ago dropped in now, they would recognize what's going on as well. So I love that sense of sort of being in the middle and being able to look back and forward. Another thing I wanted to just mention is people are always saying, you're having such a good time. You're so joyful when you dance. And I think, well, why else would you dance if you're not having fun? And then I think, and why not show that you're having fun? Why? Maybe it's our Anglo-Saxon reserve. I don't know. Why do we have to contain it? There are times when I feel like, oh, it's too much trouble to get out the door tonight. It's too cold. It's too rainy. Or I'm making a program and I think, oh, I'm so tired of all these dances. There's nothing I want to do. And I find that when I take a break or when I'm feeling that way, it's often the music that will bring me back. When I'm traveling and I haven't danced for a while, I get tune bombed after about 3 or 4 weeks. Every time I wake up, every time I go to bed, there's like these dance tunes going through my head saying, hey, your body wants to dance. And I find that if I allow myself to just pay attention to the music and fill up with it, and fill up with the beauty of the dance form, that I can come back to my place of enjoyment. And occasionally I've had an even sort of larger opening, going down a long ways set and just feeling a sudden opening of heart, where each person coming towards me is unique, precious, glowing, and I get to dance 32 bars with them. And then they pass on, and then, oh my gosh, another set of just unique and beautiful people are coming towards me, and I get to dance with them. So I each time you do the 32 bars, it's the same, but each time you do the 32 bars, it's with wonderful and special and different people, and it feels different each time. So I guess in conclusion, it's been a great privilege to have been able to dance with all of you, with many who aren't here tonight and many who've passed on. And I realized the other day that I'm waiting for the most beautiful words in the English language. Take hands 4.
Oh, wow. What a wonderful talk. Thank you, Jenny. That was, yep. We're getting a lot of comments in the chat. Thank you for voicing it so wonderfully. So, yeah. We are going, I have to do the closing things, but we'll have the after talk afterwards. We'll get lots of your questions answered, and we'll really enjoy being in there another hour with Jenny Beer. We're posting some links of things we posted already. Key to the Cellar book, we're going to post it again. And for how to find out more about Delaware Valley Gold Scottish Dance Book, and also Rootbound 2013 show. So we're going to put the link on that for you in the chat. Jenny, I can't let you go without asking, what's your favorite dance?
I knew that was going to come. Well, I refuse to have one because I think it insults all the other dances. But I did make this kind of a quick off the top of my head list for you. So for traditional dance, definitely Nottingham Swing. Partly because it's a great dance, and partly because it was my favorite dance when I was at Earlham College. That was a traditional dance. And for a set dance, I think Dusty Miller. Because the tune won't leave me alone every time I dance it, I hear it for several days afterwards. And then, as I mentioned with Key to the Cellar, there are a bunch of dances that are trance dances. Potter's Wheel, Hudson Barn, Sapphire Sea, Punch Bowl. And when I'm in a mood, those are just wonderful. And then, as will not surprise you, dances where there's flying and surging and driving and sweeping. And so some of those are the old-fashioned Trip to Paris and Dublin Bay. Also Apollo's Hunt, Stepping Stones, Leather Lake House. And I think I always come back to Jack's Maggot. If we have to come back to Playford, it never gets old. It's just a great dance. So many wonderful dances, so little time.
Yeah. Yes, I say that every week when we have dance class. And I haven't been asking as much, but I am definitely going to ask you, because you have a secret hidden thing to show us. Are you a tea drinker?
Oh, right. Well, usually often I drink Japanese tea, but tonight in your honor, I'm drinking good, strong black tea. And there's a little story about this cup. I should put it on its saucer so it looks proper. The last day I was in Berkeley before I moved back east, a dancer who often brought her granddaughter, who was in elementary school, to dance, was grateful that I made space for the granddaughter to be part of things. And it turned out she was a social worker in a hospice. And she came up as I was packing my truck, and she gave me a little shoebox that has this and one other very fine china cup in it. And she said, my current client has a collection of beautiful china and no one to inherit it. And she asked me to give away cups to people who will appreciate them. So I always think about my dance friend in California and about the generosity of the woman who was dying, who was giving away her beautiful china.
Well, that's a wonderful thing. Ah, all right. Well, thank you. Thank you to Jenny Beer. Thank you to our Five Things team, Lindsay Verbal in the background, Reed Wilson on Zoom, and Larry Hansen on Facebook, along with our helpers, Kara King, Linda Nelson, and Dan Vilter. Thank you so much for being part of this team. It's a great team to work with. Thank you to Colin Hume, who maintains an accessible index of all our web chats on this website. If you're wondering if we should have somebody on, check there first. We have 38 now over the last 8 months, and we keep going. And a big thank you to everyone who's been sending in donations to our group, the Historical Tea and Dance Society. It's very appreciated. There are operational expenses, and thank you. I wish I had time to send all of you an individual note. I have not yet, but I will get there. Maybe Christmas vacation. We are posting the After Talk link in the sidebar, so you should be able to get that. Jenny is going to put the PDF to her PowerPoint slideshow in our 5 Things Dropbox folder, which is also where you can find the chats. If you are not able to download chats, we have started putting it there, and Reed and Larry are going to post that. Let me tell you quickly what's coming up this week and next. First, coming next Tuesday, November 24th, it's Chris Sackett. We're looking forward to having him. You know him from the Sackett Friendly Sackett dances, so it'll be great to have him on. There's a lot of interesting things he has to talk with us about. Our third Saturday Historical Dance 5 Things is currently on hiatus for a few months, but we're having other really cool stuff going on. This Saturday, November 21st at 10 a.m., there's a lecture with Susan DeGuardiola, Ragtime Revolution, Vernon and Irene Castle, and James Reese Europe. I remember way back when we were talking about Black Lives Matter. This is a great lecture. You're going to want to tune in for that. Tickets are on sale on our website. And then we have a regular running dance class, historical footwork class with Susan DeGuardiola. We are on a 103B level, and there are 3 spots still open in that class. If you know the basics, you might want to check in with us about that. So I'm just throwing that out there. Join us for tea on Thursdays at 5 p.m. Drop into our Facebook page closer to the time, or drop us an email, and we will send you a link. For donations, I'm going to let you read what Jenny wrote. Rather than read it for her. So our exit music is Heading for Zero. Composer is Jenny Beer. The dance is Heading for Zero. The choreographer is Jenny Beer, of course. The band is the Fabulous English Echoes, Liz Donaldson, Colleen Reed, and Becky Ross. It's on the CD English Echoes too, and we're posting where you can buy it. And we will see everyone in the After Talk in just about 2 minutes. Bye. Thank you for being with us. Thank you, Jenny. It's been a wonderful evening. Looking forward to more.